Hey guys, welcome to the Spiritual Warrior Podcast. My name is Bob Cirino, and in this podcast, we seek to reveal the different methods and techniques and the whys behind really cool people who are living their purpose fearlessly. So I've been watching James for a long time. We went to the same university. We have a bunch of common friends. And I remember I was talking to my buddy Paul, and I was like, I'm looking for somebody who's really using their body to help other people. And not necessarily like, I'm delivering, I don't know, goods with my body, but like putting themselves through some crazy hardship for the sake of other people. And he's like, dude, James, like we went to college with University of Delaware with James, and he's doing some really, really, really intense things. You should check out what he's working on. And so I was like, oh yeah, I think I recognize the name. So I checked it out and I was like, oh my gosh, this guy is carrying well, anyway, I'll let him tell you. But James has founded a nonprofit called Mission Clean Water, which is providing water to underprivileged communities in Africa as well as in the United States, and just giving them access to clean water, which is so cool. And I'm really excited. He's joining us from Jersey City. When he's not in Uganda, then he's here with us in Jersey City. So James, thank you so much for joining us today.
Of course, and thank you so much for having me on the podcast, Bob. I really do appreciate it. I'm very excited to share about my journey and where Mission Clean Water has moved towards in the past 7 years or so. So it's been a wonderful journey. I hope I have a lot of great insights to share. So thank you so much for this opportunity.
Cool, thank you. So James, what was the first really big thing that you did for your mission? I mean, you've been on this mission for a long time,
Yeah.
but there's one particular thing that I'm thinking about that includes carrying water for a long distance. I'm wondering if you could share a little bit about that
Yeah.
experience here.
Yeah, there's multiple journeys like that. So to kind of like start at the very beginning of this story, was like my journey with, I guess, clean water or learning about it as a global issue didn't really start until high school. And then just once I discovered it, it became this little light bulb moment where it was all I could really obsess over, where like everything, my time, finances as a high schooler, anything I could do to volunteer in New York City, because I was growing up in New Jersey, just focused on that. And same thing with like my college education as well, just tailored towards trying to have as big of an impact as possible and get as involved as possible around clean water. And you begin to learn the like good, bad, and ugly sides of everything. Uh, After finishing at the University of Delaware, I moved to a town of like 300 people in West Virginia, which I absolutely love. It's absolutely one of the most underrated states. But being in such a small community compared to the 26,000 students at the University of Delaware, had to try and find very unique ways of trying to raise donations for clean water. And I tried thinking of ways that have not been completed before, what's brand new, could really try and get this story out there. So I immediately jumped into the long distance running world because women and children are walking so far every day to try and find water for their families. So the very first thing was completing a marathon a month for a year while carrying 45 pounds of water on my head. And it's intimidating for many reasons, but because it's never been done before and there's no training plan out in front of you. And the whole
Yeah.
journey seems terrifying because it is, but that makes it a little bit more accessible, a little bit more fun, I guess.
Yeah, wow. So you did one a month for 12 months?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, so how do you, I mean, this isn't like a training podcast on like how to run
Yeah.
with 40 with gallons of water on your head, but how did you go about preparing for that kind of pace?
No, definitely. So, yeah, we're not going to dive into the nitty gritties of training. That's for your next training plan podcast.
Yeah.
But a lot of it more focuses around the fact that we have these crazy goals in mind. I find it healthy to always try and have something big we're always working towards. And at times, some of these goals, if you look at it from the long picture, seem really intimidating and challenging to try and approach or overcome. But if we break this from being a year-long goal into like, all right, how can we accomplish this within the first month? Then we got month 2, month 3. How can we begin to create a sense of security
Mm.
and purposefulness trying to accomplish this, knowing that there's going to be a lot of bumps in the road. There's harder days and easier days to reaching this goal, as well as me as an individual or you as an individual. We might not have all the answers to
Mhm.
make good decisions right now, but I can reach out to the world of the internet or to close friends who might have better ideas, who can gear me towards the right way. And while, like, as an example for marathon one, I was mentally there. Physically, I thought I was pretty good, but from all these lessons my friends and family and the community has given to me, I approached it with being as ready as I thought I was and was, successful going forward.
Wow. Cool. I like that. Yeah, because when you look at it from the big picture, it's pretty
Yeah,
daunting. But
of
you'd be like,
course.
just one marathon at a time, right?
Yeah, and like it's interesting too because I have come from like a sports background, but not a long distance running background. So kind of really had to dive into it more specifically. While I still kind of do things like that just out of like pure enjoyment as well as like my form of stress relief, it also ties into the ideas around Mission Clean Water, which is, to a degree, starting a nonprofit business. We have these big ideas to
Yeah.
accomplish by next year, 2030. Trying to say we're going to help X amount of people by 2030 is daunting and it's challenging. But if we can look at this in smaller blocks, we can, get there accordingly pretty much.
So why clean water? I mean, I think it's obvious people like
Yeah,
water, and they need clean water.
definitely.
But of all the different ways that you could apply yourself in this world, you're a talented guy. You have a lot of capacity. So why is this the purpose that you have focused on?
No, that's a very, very good question. And a lot of it does tie into the beginning. I think a lot of it has have to do with in combination of my, upbringing. I've been fortunate to grow up in like suburban New Jersey, and, have my, needs met in a wonderful family. And so initially I think growing up, we learned about sustainability, we learned about climate change, we learned about food and, other issues all around us and outside our little bubble of the tri-state area. But I guess at the time, water really wasn't taught to us.
Hmm.
And then being able to kind of dive into it just through my own initiative and own interest in research really began to start creating those building blocks towards wanting to learn more and kind of beginning to create a better sense of like altruism around the world, wanting to begin to help others, but it all always focused around clean water as like the main big goal and big focus. And I think with water, one of the bigger things is that, if you don't have water in your house or your community doesn't have it, you're now or predominantly in these communities, a woman or a girl is walking multiple hours a day to try and find access to anything pretty much. So it could be
Hmm.
dirty, so I find water to be one of the basic and necessary building blocks to just take a whole community to the next step compared to, other necessities or resources. Obviously, all of these come into play, but water just has kind of taken my full attention because I see it as like the next big step for community to kind of reach the next level, I guess you can kind of consider it.
Yeah. So you recently hit a big milestone,
Yeah.
and I get your emails, and I follow you on
Yeah.
Instagram, and I'm just like, yes. So
Yes. Yeah.
could you share with our listeners a little bit about the recent big win that you had, and then
Yeah.
kind of what's coming up for you over the next 12 months or something?
Definitely, definitely. Yeah, I mean, I've always been a very big picture person and, the what's been interesting is that, the challenging part I've personally been having is celebrating the small victories, because I'm
Mm.
always imagining where we're going and not looking at our lens right now within this month or this week. So we recently did have a phenomenal big celebration and
Mhm.
really kind of, you know, showed to the NGO world what we are really capable of. So we've been in development and growing for the past 7 years or so, but this past summer really showed what we can accomplish, through the approval with the Ugandan government, as well as partnered with another nonprofit, Wells of Life, who is multiple steps, bigger than us. Uh, we worked on a partnered grant to begin looking at clean water projects that have failed in the past, could be brought back to life, and assessing, can we bring these back to life, and properly doing so
Mm.
in combination of community management and professional management. And while we initially thought the scope was going to be much smaller, so working on about 20 projects, we were able to rehabilitate about 39, giving clean water back to about 20,000 people and
Wow.
5,000 students. It's incredible, I know.
That's so
Um,
cool.
it's yeah. Every now and then, I kind of have to just like close my laptop and like think about like that was a very special moment.
Awesome.
Um, but the biggest importance of this is that, the success towards the foundation that gave us the grant funding, towards Wells of Life and the Uganda government, they're like, wow, this was more than we expected, as well as we can really see how these projects are going to be maintained into the future.
Mm.
Would you guys be interested in expanding these efforts with our new policies? And by expanding, what they mean is they more or less by 2030 want us to be managing and rehabilitating enough water resources for about 500,000 people by 2030. So scaling to that point. Yeah, no, yeah, the
That's a lot.
eyebrow
That's a
raise.
lot of marathons.
It's that's a lot more steps, exactly.
Yeah.
So it's a great victory and a great success. It's, we've proven ourselves as no longer this boutique nonprofit or NGO. We are here to make a big impact. We already have. Other organizations want us to. We have the capacity and we're ready for the next steps.
Awesome. Well, congratulations. You deserve
Thank
it.
you so much.
One thing I really, I'm not some, aficionado in all things nonprofit, but one of the things that I've seen in projects where people go into kind of underskilled or definitely underprivileged communities is that they create a short-term solution that has no capacity for longevity. And one thing that I really think is great about what I see with your projects is that you're preparing people for ongoing and continued success independent of your participation. And I think that that's just super empowering, and it's very it has a lot of foresight to it. And that's one of the reasons why I love your nonprofit so much. and
Appreciate it.
and so I want to tap into a little bit about um, as a long distance hiker, walker, runner, how does that um, I don't know, habituation of your mind, right? You're creating these neural pathways of like, sustainability just in the scope of my own darn body, in the scope of
Yeah.
my own mental capacity. How does that discipline that you developed in yourself personally translate over to the way that you scope and approach projects?
No, but that's a beautiful question. And yeah, it's when I tell folks, if you were interested in a marathon, if you're interested in even going farther, or if like you just want to dive into your first 5K and so on, everyone has the ability to do so. But 90% of it is all just mental will. And a lot
Mm.
of people will ask me, like, what do you think about when you're running? And I'm like, nothing really, just this current present moment. And that's mostly it, or what little pain and experiences I'm facing. But the beauty about some of these long distance races or events, whether you're out there for 2 hours, 6 hours, 24 hours, is that, and I've had the chance of, supporting people doing these runs and have done a few myself and have organized races and watched people go through this, is that it builds a level of resiliency that is really hard to experience in other realms of, life pretty much.
Mm.
In the sense of if you do sign up for a 12-hour, 24-hour event, no distance tied to it. You just want to walk and see how far you can get, and you're very determined to go the entire time, is that no matter your experience, there's going to be challenges along the way. You didn't eat well or drink well hour 2, so hour 3 your electrolytes are super low, or at hour 4, your feet are wet and are starting to blister. All these different things come up, but we're so focused on making it to the very end. We try and develop and figure out these solutions to, you know, solve what is this current problem we're facing? How can I find solutions to, alleviate it or fix it? Because there typically always is. And, what can I do to consistently be able to move forward the next few runs or so? And, be consistent continually. Because in the end, regardless if your goal is to do in terms of distance, you want to do a nice hike with your friends and family, to the Appalachian Trail, to a long distance marathon, or your first 5K. There's going to be challenges that are going to come along the way. What defines us is what solutions can we find to prevent it and continue going forward.
Mm.
And the reason we train so much is we try and with training is that I try and experience these problems in a more simulated way so I can figure out beforehand, like, all right, this is what happened. This is the issue. Here's what I can do to prevent it.
Cool.
And let's keep on going forward. Yeah, and
Yeah.
then in the end, it's just all mental will towards the end.
Yeah. Wow. When you're talking, so one of my favorite texts to study is the Bhavana Krama, which is
Mhm,
the steps or stages of meditation. And
mhm.
what's really interesting is, when you go to have a nice, deep, long meditation, it kind of feels like a marathon where you're
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
you're like, okay, cool. I'm gonna sit. I'm gonna be here for a while. And the way that Kamala Shila, the author, wrote in like 700 AD, the way that he describes it is, you, if you understand what challenges are going to come up, which are very predictable, right? Blisters
yeah,
in the shoes,
yeah,
electrolyte management, hydration, like these are very, very predictable things, and
mhm,
we would be foolish to not anticipate them. So if
yeah,
we can understand them, we can anticipate them, then we can prepare ourselves with the solution so that when it comes up,
mhm,
we can resolve it. And
definitely.
that kind of preparation to still the mind when we have distractions coming in and we're saying, what's for lunch, what's for lunch, or, something like that. And you're
Of
trying
course.
to, stay focused in your meditation. It reminds me a lot of the way that you're talking about preparing for something like a marathon,
Mhm.
because things are going to come up.
Yeah,
So how can we prepare ourselves for that? And at least in the spiritual warrior framework, you know, we do work in the spiritual aspect of things, which is the mental realm. It's the
yeah,
realm. It's a non-tangible. It's an intangible realm, the realm of our heart, the realm of our spirit, the
mhm,
realm of our mind. But we do all of these physical practices to prepare and discipline ourselves so that the challenges in our physical world are preparing us for the challenges in our spiritual world,
yeah,
which is like things like being angry or wanting to hurt
yeah.
somebody who hurts you. You know, how can we learn dealing with blisters as an analog to dealing with people who are emotional blisters in our life?
No, of course, of course. But there's also a sense of beauty to it, and this, relates to like when I was much more heavily meditating and into more in my yoga practice, in the sense of even when you're meditating and you're really trying to be thoughtful, be in the present, ignore the past, be in the future, think about your breath and rely on like your mantras. There's always going to be those moments where, you're sitting there, you're comfortable, you're relaxed, but just mentally we're having trouble getting into the right thought processes we
Mm,
need to have
mhm,
a purposeful meditation where we're trying to be comfortable. We're thinking to ourselves like, I have this coming up, I have that coming up, I'm not comfortable, my mind's racing, everything's going on. And so a lot of it, and same with in the running world, we can do a ton to prepare ourselves to have a great meditative experience because that's what a lot of runners do experience. But if our mind isn't trying to be focused and we are choosing to drift away, it becomes very challenging to focus on what the overarching, purposes can be. And regardless of how well prepared you are in the running world, there's always going to be like different walls and mental gaps we're always going to experience. But it's the same in meditation where you're trying to be thoughtful and be in the present. But if we can't get that mantra and that focus going, we, can have tricky situations.
So I'm sure you've been doing this for 7 years. I'm sure there's been opportunities when it's felt like, man, this is impossible. Or, like, is this, like, can I do this? Or, you know, are we going to get there? So I'd love to dig in a little bit into, the tagline that we have as spiritual warriors: live fearlessly on purpose.
Mhm.
And so the idea of on purpose, that was felt very clear for you for a long time. Like you said, basically
Yeah.
since high school, you're like, cool, clean water is really important. And that's something that can help everybody.
Yeah.
But I want to get into this aspect of fearlessness. And the way that we talk about fearlessness in the context of spiritual warrior is not that you are without fear or without uncertainty, but you've prepared yourself and you've disciplined yourself so that when it comes, that you know how to deal with it, and that's what makes you fearless and kind of taking those adversities head on. So I would love to hear a little bit about experiences that you've had in the past where you were like, "This is stupid. Why am I doing this? Like this is impossible." And then, but you didn't give up, and so kind of take me through a couple of experiences that you've had where you had to dig deep, get grounded, and then ultimately keep going.
Yeah, no, of course. I mean, that's a great question. And, you know, uh, I think I've been fortunate enough where through past experiences and, choosing to dive into this ultra marathon world, I've been able to start at a strong, grounded base where, as well as for me myself, coming from maybe a nature hiking background initially, understanding my kind of minimalist attitude towards things at times in the sense of I understand there's going to be a ton of bumps and a ton of ups and downs along this entire journey, and understanding that these are all temporary, as well as my personal journey is around clean water. But if your journey is something else, it's creating more spiritual warriors and more focused individuals, whatever it might be, we have all these resources and all these community members to be able to assist us going forward. And so, like, I think early on creating this, I knew going forward, creating a nonprofit as a nonprofit entrepreneur is going to have its challenges along the way. I am willing to make the sacrifices I can to really see what we can accomplish because my overall goal has been for a long time to make this, my only full-time paid position. And we're consistently getting closer and closer and closer. Uh, but knowing that until I get there, there's going to be challenges with finances, my emotional state, where I am, fluctuating and moving around. I've lived in people's basements and climbing gyms, and I've survived off, the chicken you can buy at ShopRite that's $6 for a whole roasted chicken for months on end. But knowing that there's uncomfortable challenges right now, but in the future, we'll be able to progress into something much more sustainable and better into the future. And I'm already kind of pushing towards that now. Um, and so I guess another example is like during after I finished those marathons for a year, I did the cross country walk from New Jersey to California as another big fundraiser, another big overarching goal that's very intimidating. And there was a ton of challenges along the way. And I remember the only day I ever wanted to quit was day two because
Oh.
yeah, very early
Not what I
on.
expected, yeah.
Because day one and day two, this was in the middle of May. And I was in New Jersey, so I was a close enough proximity where my dad, I could just call and be like, "Hey, I'm all done for today," and he would drive a half hour, come pick me up, and I'd come on back home and relax. But that was also during like a horrible heat wave, and I had no idea how I handled the heat. And
Mm.
even, spending all day walking in 100-degree weather, just getting beaten down, like hiding in as much shade as possible. At the end of day two, because I knew day three, like my dad can't get me anymore. Like this is it. Uh, Sitting at my parents' house in like the fetal position on the couch, thinking like, what did I do to myself? But just had to, like, look at who I am, what I have. I was able to, like, cut 10 pounds of weight off the weight that I was carrying, looked at all the supplies that I had and just thought like, "You wanna know what? Let's just keep going, see where we're headed." And after that, everything was pretty much fine. There was, of course, roadblocks with weather and people and all that stuff, but just knowing that, all right, this issue I'm experiencing today is not going to be there tomorrow. Let's just keep going and move forward. Same with the most recent story with all the nonprofit stuff. Thinking to myself like, all right, I'm not going to look at my friends and my family who are my age in their 30s that went into finance and engineering and computer science who are making the big bucks right now and having kids and flourishing different lifestyles. We're all okay with that. They support me, I support them. It's beautiful. So for now, I am going to just try and make ends meet, literally sleeping in climbing gyms over the entire summer, working there, making significantly less, but it's enough to keep the dream going, keep everything sustainable. I'm happy. I have a roof, I have food, I have my own clean water. I'm good. So
Mm.
a lot of it has been trying to avoid comparing myself to other people, and of course it does still happen with the day and age of social media, but I'm fortunate to have a strong support network where they're like, just go for like a mile walk, no phone, just walk around, get grounded, spend some time away, and everything tends to relax a little bit. Or I'm just a little hungry, that tends to help too.
Wow, cool. So
Yeah.
this is I want to drop a little bit deeper,
Okay.
James. So like clean water, obviously that's like a very important thing, but why do you care so much about that you're willing to put your life into such a condition set that this is the thing? Like, why is that so important to you?
Yeah, I tend to try and answer this question often myself. And, I find it similar to being like, why has this path become the meaning of my personal life and why this sense of giving back? And I think a good portion of it uh, a part of it does come from my, upbringing. So I grew up in Scotch Plains, New Jersey. It's upper middle, wealthy class.
Mhm.
And before knowing about clean water, my only concern was playing soccer and hanging out with friends, and that was it. Um, but I think clean water and learning about it began opening up the door of like, there's so much more out there that we could be doing to begin giving back. And regardless if we have the finances or times, whether it be us volunteering locally, wanting to give internationally, um, there's always ways of trying to provide more assistance to individuals. So I think the caring came from my upbringing a little bit. That kind of sparked the big interest. I think clean water was just the turning or tipping point. That's just where the discovery of that began kind of shaping my personality and ideas around the world that we live in to push towards those interests. I was also fortunate to have two great role models, my Aunt Carol and Uncle Vince, who I'd
Mhm.
visit routinely as a kid to go, like, they took me to the Grand Canyon. uh, they took me hiking quite regularly out in Colorado and Oregon. So being able to be kind of removed and in a different world gave me the opportunity to kind of see their values and ideas around the world and being like, that all makes a lot of sense. There's so much outside what we're experiencing and so many ways to give back. Let's seeing how we can kind of mold and move towards all of that. And I just think over the years, it consistently got reinforced as I was at the University of Delaware and just fell in love with. I think the entire time I was there, I like would volunteer every Friday calling bingo numbers at like a senior home, and would volunteer wherever I could and just be continually reinforced around these ideas of giving back. And I think clean water was just always the motion and the push towards it. As well as I think to a degree, I do enjoy putting myself in uncomfortable situations. And so realizing like I need to be consistently learning as much about this as possible. Sometimes doing this, I have to just fly over to Uganda. And, when we started our work there, I knew no one there. Well, I had a contact there who was just emailing me, never met the individual, but was like, all right, I just got to fly over there, see how this goes, to, visiting other countries. It's consistently opened the doors to want to learn and develop more as an individual. So I guess to kind of reshare the answer, I think just clean water has always been the caveat as a way of wanting to give back and
Yeah.
has consistently turned towards my own, personal and spiritual journey. And I personally like don't, see it any other way. I think right now it's changed a little bit to see how I can give more back towards friends and family, but it's been kind of the consistent focus for a long time and still, you know, the thing I obsess over regularly.
So why is giving back so important to you? So, we talk about water is just like basically the vehicle for this spiritual yearning, or, you're just so committed to the words you use, giving back, or, helping others. And you had great role models, but there's all kinds of role models for all kinds of things. So
Yeah.
why did,
Yeah.
like, in your heart, why is it so critical to live a life of giving back?
No, definitely. This is a fun conversation because I don't think I've ever actually been asked this question since starting this entire journey. You know, I I think a lot of it does have to do with a combination of like genuinely enjoying it. I as an individual have a very hard time accepting help from people, but
Mm,
love giving help, as well as expect and don't want anything in return. Like, you don't need any praise on social media. Um, just have genuinely enjoyed it for many years, for quite some time. And I think when starting this journey, I guess you can say back in like 2011 or so, and in college, I think this was like a consistent time where, at least to myself, it's something I routinely enjoyed. As I started it, I saw, and I know even doing simple stuff like volunteering at senior homes or offering any
mhm.
assistance at a soup kitchen or creating my own little pamphlets and walking around New York City of like housing assistance and dental assistance and medical assistance programs to people in New York City. It might seem like, the hour you are doing is having a little impact, but the simple impact of providing someone with a smile for the day could shape the rest of their day into the rest of their week. And you really, have no idea what making one person's day better can have an effect on their entire outlook, and at least things going onward. Without a doubt, helping someone has an immediate impact on their day, but you don't know who else they're meeting that day that they could kind of spread that positivity towards. You have no idea what they're going through as an individual as well. So even moments like this, being a soundboard or being able to, provide help, I think realizing that, there's so much more to my life. Because at the time before all this, I just wanted to be an accountant because I was told I had the highest starting salary out of college. And I was like, all right, let me just
No
do
way.
that. That makes sense. And so it began changing the interests towards wanting to find ways, as many ways as possible, to to give back. I just love doing it. Uh, Still continue to do so to today. It just looks different, I guess you can say.
Hmm.
Uh, but I think a lot of it focuses around like even something simple like you're at the subway and there's, tourists trying to figure out how to get a subway card in New York City, like walking them through the steps. I'm in no rush. Like if I'm a minute late, that's fine. I can help you out. Things like that, even though it seems simple, it breaks you from your consistent routine of plugging in your headphones and walking along. You don't know what they're going through that you might be able to help them with a little bit of assistance. And I feel like every time you do choose to do it, it goes so much farther than ourselves. So it's always great to try and find ways. And I guess to share, like, listen, if your idea is to become the accountant and to make as much money as possible, that's fine too. We all have our own paths. It's what I'm focusing on, and have greatly enjoyed it.
Mm. I love that. The smile, one of my early experiments with like giving love, um, was at University of Delaware. Well, I mean, I grew up where my family was really focused on helping others.
Okay.
It was just a core value that my family had, and I'm very lucky to grow up in that kind of
Yeah.
scenario. Um, but I remember there was this one time, because as I'm hearing you speak, what I'm hearing is ripples of light is like one of the terms that I think about is like how can a single action
Yeah.
like just ripple into creating light in a world that sometimes can feel kind of dark. And
Yeah.
it's like such a radical rebellion. I'm just such a rebel at heart. It's just like such a radical
Of course.
rebellion to be light,
Yeah.
in a world that like is tending towards entropy or like towards and so I remember University of Delaware, there was this one path that I would take to class and back, and I was like, I'm gonna do an experiment. I said, I'm gonna smile as like hard as I can and make like very genuine eye contact with everybody on my path this entire semester. And I'm going to see how that changes my experience of this geography. Because I was just like, I don't know if you know Shane Palco, but Shane blew my mind with like this idea of like people in place. Like he connected this idea of people in place to me so deeply. And so I was like, what about these people in this place? Can a behavior shift in myself change this relationship with people in place? And so I just remember just over the months, it went from people being like, who's that weird guy who smiles? To at the end, it was just like, just joy. Like, because there's
Yeah.
regular people that you obviously cross paths with because they're going every single day the same way
Oh
you are.
yeah.
And it's just like, whoa, this is such a preferable world. A world
Yeah.
of smiles. And I didn't wait for the smiles to come to me. I was the smile and I
Yeah.
gave the smile and now I'm surrounded by smiles. I was like,
Yeah.
that's such a tiny little experiment, but I, it's just always had such a profound impact on me of how like a tiny little action consistently done with a pure motivation, or at least as pure as I could muster, I guess, um, can change the world.
Yeah.
And even in that tiny kind of trivial way. But then I was like you're saying, like, well, what's the rest of this person's day gonna be like?
Yeah.
Um, and so, I really connect with that idea. And what I also hear in your story is a deep sensation of connection with others, right? Where, like deep empathy.
Yeah.
And because, if we live a life of self gratification where we're like, how can I, me at the expense of others, um, you know, I'm sorry if that hurt you, but I needed it for me. Like
Yeah.
that's like a pretty prevailing concept or like a mental habit.
Mhm.
But what I'm hearing with you is that you're like, well, we're all in this together. And
Yeah.
so me like taking 5 more seconds to let this lost tourist, meander
Yeah.
and then not get frustrated with them, you know, their experience is important to me. So I'm curious, what were some things in your life that opened up that feeling of connectivity to others to really feeling in your heart the truth that other people's suffering is relevant to your life and is a priority in your experience.
No, definitely. I think there's two examples, as we talk about this that I'm like immediately thinking of.
Mhm.
And, you know, I think a focus does have to be, on the surface, we uh, tend to look very happy and want to try and give back and, are trying to be consistently supporting people. And I remember after I graduated University of Delaware, I volunteered or I worked at a summer camp in San Diego. And there was a presenter that came to our school. I think it was called like the Post-its or something. Like people would just write to him on Post-its anonymously.
Mhm.
Wouldn't like no signature, goofy things, some very serious things, dark things, anything. And just like hearing it read out loud sometimes because he was like a public speaker, you're like, oh wow, these people in this room are all experiencing crazy challenges. And at this
Mm.
camp, there's a bunch of like high schoolers, their own little, cliques and groups, and everyone's a little, just typical high schoolers. But I did that same activity with them, and being able to hear out loud some of like the challenges people are experiencing, some goofy things and other things like that, really began to pave the way towards all these individuals realizing like we're the same age, there's challenges we're all experiencing. Some are really worse than what I might be experiencing that I wrote down. It kind of began creating that strong support network, and people really begin wanting to try and find ways of assisting others in more smaller manners. And in the end, like, you never know who you are helping, or even at times you might not be just by showing a positive attitude. Like another example, when I was doing another big fundraiser during COVID, I was pretty much running at a park for 30 days in a row doing 30 miles. But because I was consistently there and people noticed my continual presence, there was this one lady who eventually like introduced herself. We started talking. She would run and walk with me. And I didn't see her again for like another year or so when I revisited that park. And she was like, "Oh my goodness, James, so happy to see you.
Mhm.
After I would walk with you each day, I've kept that going for an entire year. I haven't stopped.
Wow.
My like diabetes has gone down. My heart conditions have greatly improved. The
No
doctors are
way.
like, this is amazing." So it's like small notions like that can make a big difference, and allowing someone to start their journey can be amazing, amazing too. So you, you never know, I guess.
Yeah. Cool. Wow. Well, James, this has been a lot of fun. I really enjoyed, you know, I really enjoyed hearing about your experiences, and I really admire the work that you're doing. So, if our listeners were inspired by what they heard from you, where can they find you? How can they connect? How can they support you?
Of course, definitely. So the best way to connect with us is through our website, missioncleanwater.org. If you want to directly message me, I'm just James at missioncleanwater.org for email. And then we do also have a Instagram page, Mission Clean H2O, because someone else took the other handle. I respond to all those directly. So feel free to message me. Whether you are interested in clean water, getting more involved with our organization, or have your own ideas and want to figure out how to build or develop them, or just want to talk to me more further, anyone is welcome to message me about anything they want to have a conversation about.
Cool. Guys, connect with James, follow him. It's very inspiring to see someone who is so dedicated and committed and consistent in pursuing their purpose fearlessly. So, James, is there any last messages that you want to share with our community?
I guess I can just kind of, summarize a lot of what I've been, chatting about. I've been fortunate enough to really enjoy this, I guess, long distance running world. It's become my version of stress relief and emotional support. Uh, it's not for everyone, and I completely understand that. If you need help finding an activity that does create that for you, just feel free to message me. Any journey is going to have a ton of ups and downs, but there's always solutions to go forward, and whatever you're dealing with, you'll be able to work around it. So don't forget to work and chat with your personal network too. So appreciate it, and thank you so much for the time.
Cool. Thank you so much, James. May you live
Thank you.
fearlessly on purpose.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. Peace.